I will not be sewing in this video. Instead, I'm attempting a primary school level arts and crafts project by making a paper mache mask. As part of my job at the museum, I've been requested by my coworker to assist by running some workshops about the Zapusty folk traditions in central Poland. So what are Zapusty? Zapusty is essentially the Polish version of the Carnival, the Venetian Carnival. So it's the last week before Lent, where you're essentially having all the fun that you can't have during Lent, because you're meant to be suffering along with Jesus. Instead of Shrove Tuesday, we have the so-called Tłusty Czwartek, where instead of pancakes, you eat donuts, which frankly I think is kind of the tastier option, because I do like a good donut. And that is actually coming up next week, and I'm really excited. Essentially, during this carnival, those living in the village put on maszkary, which is the name for these masks, and put on these elaborate costumes, go door to door in the village, and request treats, food, money. It's kind of like trick-or-treating, because you do threaten them with the tricks, so it's kind of like Easter trick-or-treat. There's a lot of traditional costumes that I usually go for. You've got the beasts, you've got the demons, you've got death, you've got the kings, you've got some more questionable things. Of course, these traditions are in all of Eastern Europe, not just Poland. Zapusty is what it's called in the Catholic community in Poland, more Eastern Poland, Ukraine, Belarus, Russia. You got Maslenica. In Lithuania, you've got Różgawenes. Chime out on my pronunciation, to make sure the children do not pick some questionable things to make masks of, because children. I'm going to enforce that we do animal masks. I think that's a fairly safe solution, but I am going to do a test run first, and that's what this video is. So stay tuned while I see if I can figure out how to do paper mache, because my main issue is that I can't actually use the paper mache glue, the one that I boil out of flour, because I don't have a stove at the museum, and I do not want to travel an hour and a half by public transport with about a liter of homemade glue. So I think the best solution would be to use wallpaper paste, and that's what I'll be testing, because my granddad apparently still has some in the basement. Okay, ASMR portion over. I think I will release a separate full ASMR video just because the sounds are accidentally really delicious. So I'm just going to make 2 videos, I guess. Back to the actual mask. I'm starting off with a basic faceplate made of cardboard. I have quite a lot of cardboard lying around from the refurbishments me and my granddad have been doing, so it's enough to make a faceplate for myself and another 30 faceplates for the students that will come to my workshop. The faceplate just covers my eyes and is in a general oval shape. I traced the more or less position of the eye holes using my glasses, and then cut out some vaguely uneven looking eyes. I'm gonna say that's on purpose to make it look a bit more organic. I will shape the mask using old scraps of paper, old clothing patterns, old presentation notes that I've made for other workshops, and in general some old newspapers. I have also robbed my grandmother's paper tape to glue it all together. What I'm doing is ripping up tiny pieces of this scrap paper that's already been used, rolling it up into tubes, and I'm sticking it down very messily with the paper tape to make the mask more 3D. This pre-prepared 3D paper disaster, I guess, will then be paper mache to look more even. It does not have to be perfect at this stage because, as I said, everything will be covered with paper mache anyway, so do not worry if it looks a bit funky at this stage. This is also where you can get really creative with the shape of the snout, deciding what animal you are making. I have gone for a wolf. At this point I realized that I've forgotten to add the ears, so I'm quickly cutting some out of some scraps. I only had these really thin strips left, so these strips will be glued together with the tape and then cut into the ear shapes. I then used the same masking tape I used for the rest of the mask to glue the ears together. I found that if I shape the underside, the part that's attached to the mask, I found that if I shape that part to be slightly curved, it sits nicer on the actual mask. We have now gotten to my favorite part, which is what I called the forbidden kishel, when the children asked me what it was. So kishel is this sweet treat usually that is made out of starches and fruit juice to make this kind of sweet, fruity tasting glue. And the texture is very similar to this glue. So, hence the forbidden kishel. It is wallpaper paste that I mixed with water, left to sit for a bit, and now I'm going to use. The first method I had was to use a spoon and some latex gloves that my grandmother had left over from gardening. However, I did not like this method. It was very messy. As you can tell, the latex gloves are not my hand size, and it was just very unwieldy and difficult to deal with. It became very messy and very unpleasant. I also found that it did not apply either the glue or the paper strips very evenly, so I had to correct it a few times, and every time I'd apply a new one, the one underneath would slide away because it would get stuck to the latex. It was just not a good time. As you can see here, some bunched up. This is where I lose my mind, and I ask my granddad if there's anything else I can use that he has, that he can spare me, and he gave me his old shaving brush. So I switched to that brush, and frankly, it made the whole process much easier and ironically much cleaner. My hands felt much less disgusting, so I didn't have to deal with the latex, and the brush still prevented the glue from sticking to my hands. And as you can see here, it applies the glue much easier, much cleaner, and in a much more even way. This took 2 days to dry, so let me just warn you straight away. 2 days later, it was finally dry enough, so I drew on the details that I was going to paint over. I decided to draw some teeth, in this case, and decided that apart from the teeth, I will improvise the rest of the design. I had a huge tube of black acrylic, so that's what I'm going to use. All my other acrylic paints are in small bottles, so black it is, and I think that works for me anyway. The whole thing was painted black, and then I wanted to add some details using a more yellow and more brown paint to emulate the fur in some way. So that's what I did. I painted the yellow and brown around the eyes and around the ears predominantly in these little flicks. I know the mask isn't 100% perfect, but also it's not meant to be perfect. A few seconds after I finished taking the last pictures, I got charged at by a boar, which ironically is the second time that this happens in my town. Thank you very much for watching. I have recently hit 1,000 subscribers, which is very exciting for me, so I hope you stick around. Have a lovely day wherever you are, and I'll see you next time.